Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned business of the week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is Jopar Transport, co-owned by Terrell Johnson and Bracy Parr. At Jopar Transport, they pride themselves in offering reliable bulk material hauling in the Hampton Roads area. And Jopar Transport offers their clients safety and legal compliance expertise, hauling and heavy equipment experience, and unrivaled customer service. Remember, whether near or far, choose Jopar.
In my humble estimation, optimism towards relationships is at an all-time low. And on this week's episode of the Infusion Breakdown Show, the Breakdown crew sat down among ourselves to discuss whether or not relationships are dying, and if not, why might it appear to be the case? Let's see what we come up with.
So the question we have for today, are relationships dying? Comment below, let us know your opinion. So yeah, it was my question. But just to answer the question first, I'll say no. I don't think relationships are actually dying. To say that they're actually dying means like they're gonna go extinct by 2035 or something like that. So I don't think relationships are actually dying. There could be less relationships and less marriages in all, but I don't think relationships as a whole is dying. But one thing I wanted to ask and introduce into the conversation, and you guys can like answer the question with the initial question or what, but are relationships dying for African Americans? That's what I want to ask, because as you can see, there are more interracial marriages, as you can see with the rise of those and everything like that. And of course, not all Black men are like this, but Black men have more resources to get women into today's society. So there's plenty of Black men who appear to be with the women behind closed doors and then mess around rather than be in a committed relationship. And that's usually because a lot of Black men haven't faced certain traumas from their past. And then we talked about in the not the last episode, but another episode about Black women and how they have higher expectations now, and how Black women aren't settling anymore. And I was wondering that could contribute to, relationships dying among African Americans. And I know you probably heard about the reports too of everyone probably being mixed race in the future. So I was like curious.
The NBA?
Like the what?
Like the NBA?
NBA?
Yeah, like Bracy.
Basketball?
Yeah, Bracy sent me some video to where they were doing, I don't know what kind of league it was, but the parents were walking out their sons for the league, and it was so many like interracial couples, and the kids were damn near looking the same, because it's a joke about the NBA by like a certain year it's just gonna be interracial people. But yeah, this is a lot, Josh. I didn't expect there to be this many pieces to this question.
Yeah, so like I said, you can answer it separate, or you can just like do it together if you actually can. But that's something I want to introduce, because yeah, as a whole, I don't think relationships are dying. I think people are still getting with each other, and I don't think it's gonna go extinct, by a certain year, nothing like that. So I'm curious between African Americans though, because we put so much expectation on each other. So I'm curious. What do you guys think? Des can go first if you still thinking, Brian.
I was doing something a little differently this week. I really didn't do as much preparation, kind of because this is related to things that we've already talked about in the past and some other thoughts that I might have. So, I mean, we can just keep it very discussional. I don't have I'm not gonna go on like a tirade or anything like that. But I don't agree with you. So I had just what I did look at.
About what exactly?
Okay, thank you. So I don't agree with you. I believe that they are.
Okay.
Like they're in the decline. So what I looked at some data, and apparently over the past 20 years, like since the 90s, the rate of single people that are living separately is like 20% higher than what it was a little over 20 years ago. And that in itself is indicative of, I guess, people waiting longer to be in relationships, or I guess them to lose favor. And there's a number of factors. I can say that a lot of people, they haven't processed things, kind of like you just said, essentially. and they could become jaded towards it. And when people feel like they're in competition, it's like the thing where it's like, oh, I don't need this person. I don't like a woman says I don't need a woman, or excuse me, I don't need a man, and a man says I don't need a woman to do certain things. Like, you're defeating the point. Kind of like what we talked about when Maj and Diamond were on here. And I feel like we have a phenomenon of rampant individualism, and people tend to undermine the importance. Because I think inside of ourselves, most people they want that, but what they do or what they're willing to do in order to get that is different. So like, they'll tell themselves that they don't want something even though they really do. It's like they're trying to fool themselves, and then they'll come up with all kinds of excuses. It's like they're working backwards, so they can say, okay, well, I'm I can't meet anybody that fits what I want, or nobody understands me. It's like they try to make themselves like a unicorn, essentially. This is one thing that I've seen. It's like, okay, well, do you think that you're really that special, that the problem that you have that nobody else can relate to? And they're just really quick to disqualify people. Like, I know you see a lot of people post this thing where it's like, oh, I lose interest easy. And I think that's a defense mechanism. It's like, yes, you really could have short attention, which isn't something executive boast about either. But a lot of times they'll just look for the smallest things just to disqualify people, so they don't have to go through the rigors of actual emotional vulnerability. And I think I see a lot of that. And after you start to see it more and more, like with specific individuals, it's easy to recognize. And I see that increasing. So just for a number of different reasons. I mean, I'm not gonna say like, okay, social media and whatever. Okay, that might be part of it, but I see more so psychological trends in terms of like the way people think and the way we behave that are responsible for that.
I got you. So are you saying, like, as we go towards the future, relationships will die out? Is that what you're like saying? Like, romantic relationships gonna die out?
I don't know that they're gonna die out completely, but they're definitely less popular. Like, there is a lower priority, because even for myself, like, having my ideal future does involve like being married, have the family and all, like, cool, that kind of thing. But I feel like it's something that you have to actually work towards. Like, I'm not currently in a relationship. I don't think any of us currently are, per the last episode that we just shot. But I'm living my life in a way that prepares me and doesn't ruin my chances of the future that I want. So it's not like I'm not concerned with, oh, I have to get married tomorrow, because some people are actually like that. They're just quick to jump into a relationship. They say, okay, I'm ready for a relationship. Nah, you're looking for somebody to fill a void. That's what that is. As opposed to being open to interact with individuals and seeing where that takes you and if you're compatible, and then building from there. I feel like that's entirely different. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But the piece about black couples or black people in general, that is interesting, because I had just saw a tweet the other day about, if you give me some time, I can find it and circle back to it. But I'm curious to hear what
you can try to find it when Des is talking.
Yeah.
So I did my best as you guys were talking to listen thoroughly and not respond as you guys were, and of course, mentally respond as you guys were talking. And I agree with both of you, but I agree with both of you on different premises. I don't think that relationships are dying, because, as you guys said, that it requires an expiration date of some sort. So to imply that something is dying means that it's decaying to a point of no return. But I do think that relationships are going through a period of neglect as a byproduct of our own ignorance to the mastery of self. And this seems like some like fake deep, aisle that I'm about to go down, but it actually is more simple than it is complex. I think that, if we want to factor in evolution and how we are evolving as a society, as people, and as individuals, relationships are being neglected in that particular sense. And what I mean by that is that we have ease of access to everything that we could have ever imagined. Anything we want is at our fingertips. Anything that you can think, you could put it on the web and you can get an answer in like record amount of time. So I think with just the ease of access that we have to things, the ability to sit back and be genuine and complex in something that is as dynamic as a relationship doesn't seem reasonable. But that all boils down to my perspective to the master yourself, because with that, if you're consistent with, you know, your practice, if you're disciplined with, you know, your emotions and just who you are as a person, you can navigate through this period of evolution that we're going through. So I don't think it's dying. I think it's stagnating. And as a result, because of genuine emotion being involved with the relationship, we see relationships ending with no new relationships pending or, you know, coming to fruition. I think we're seeing a lot of, you know, and I'm a statistic of it, like, you know, single parenthood. And I will tell you that through single parenthood, I've learned just how important it is to master yourself, to truly go through, and kind of what we talked about on the episode that with being a father, like you truly learn all the genuine emotions that's needed to take care of life. And a relationship is a second life. It's a unionship between you and that person. If you don't know how to take care of yourself outside of just going to school, going to work, paying bills, doing this, that, and third, if you don't know how to water and nurture yourself, you can't water or nurture a relationship. And if you can't do that, it's easier to fill these voids with new cutting edge technology, you know, whatever it is you need, streaming services, anything to fill in this void, you now have it to where the master yourself is kind of like just, I'll get to it when I get to it. Very few people are able to take that, you know, proactive approach to learning who you are, feeling every emotion you need to feel, and just building off of that. Like, I think it's a thing. And it's also, you know, the evolution of women at the same time. Like, women are evolving to a point where what you saw with your parents is no longer plausible today. And I think that us as not just men, but us as just like a society, like, if the relationship that you are going for does not match what, if you're two cogs that don't match what you saw growing up, then you're going to struggle with, you know, building that today, because today's version of a relationship is not what it was, I'll say 27 years ago for the sake of me. But
Yeah.
we haven't seen what it looks like yet. We have no knowledge of it. We're being innovative. We're creating this new perspective of what a relationship is, but there's nothing to go off of. We're creating it now, and we don't, I'll just be very blunt, we're not innovative enough people to create and be independent in the sense of what our relationship should look like. We think it has to look like something instead of what it just is. And what is just a unionship, you know, between two people. It's your own, like, it's your own thing. It's not meant to make sense to everybody, and I think we struggle with that.
That's something, Des, I'm glad you touched on it, is the generational difference. And that's something. So first off, I want to say I talked to my sister. This is a few years ago. I forget what the exact conversation was about, but it was about how far along we are in our lives. I know that much. But I had told her that it often takes longer to do things the right way. And fundamentally, I think that's what you're saying. But I also look at this too. I just did some quick Googling here. And the rate of Black college students has also risen over time. So I look at the difference between myself, my sister. We're both. I have a 4-year college degree. My sister, she's gonna finish soon, but neither one of my parents went to college. My parents had me when my dad was 24 and my mom was 23. They had been married for 2 years at that point. But I say that to say, when you decide to go to college, oftentimes that delays your life cycle, so to say, like the series of events, because okay, those are 4 years where you have intensive rigor with your academic studies. Some people do it like this. You had your son like at the very end of college, but for most people they wait until like to start their families way like after they've got more established. So just by adding those few years, that could be something that's contributed to this as well. Because a lot of people, they have, for one, you're focusing on you get your degree, and then you rack up your student debt. You're back in the world. You're trying to get that stability again, and then when the stakes are higher, it's more serious. You could stand to waste, and I say waste loosely because you can't really, like, time is extremely valuable per the conversation we had before we started. But a 1 year relationship that doesn't go anywhere is a lot less detrimental at 20 than it is at 27, and that's that's something that I think a lot of people realize too late. But yeah, I think just like generational differences, because with all of us, I don't know if Des, you said your parents went to college. Josh, I think your parents didn't go.
No, my parents didn't go to college. My dad was a military.
In the service, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the service, and my mom's actually went back to college when I was in college at the same time.
Shout
So,
out to
yeah.
Mama Freeman, but there was yeah, I think that's also something that's responsible to this too. We're getting in serious relationships that are, or at least starting families later.
I think the barriers of entry have changed a lot too, because you say like your parents got married in their like early 20s,
Yeah.
and when we think about just the cost of living back then, it was a completely different dynamic. Like there's so many different things you have to think about here in 2022 or midway through 2022 with the pending or already current recession. It's kind of hard to fathom taking care of yourself, taking care of another individual, or even, you guys going 50-50 on things, and it's still not being enough. Because as you love to bring up this stat when we're talking about divorce, like finance is the number one leading cause to divorce. So like I said, with this ease of access and with us being able to get that information, we're double and triple checking our word. This is really something we want to turn in. And it's like, I wouldn't say everyone. For me, I'm definitely that person. Like, I'm running through my financial checklist to even see if I can afford just entertaining something, because it's a cost. Even if it's like dating, just basic dating, it's still a cost. So you do have to like factor in all those things now with just how expensive everything is, and how I won't ever use it as an excuse because it doesn't necessarily 100% apply to me, but how little wages are rising. You have to always think about things like that.
Yeah, I can say that that's a good point with just how different the economy is. I guess that's something to consider. But also, I think on the previous episode, I also looked at some statistics on how the amount of money that we are earning has also raised, and then us, we tend. So I'm in the tech field. That's probably one of the highest earning spaces to be in. You're also in IT, which is also very lucrative. So I think it's very situational, because we're a little bit abstract. Not saying we're exempt from being financially impacted, but it's your earning potential is higher in fields like that.
Yep. Did you want to answer the other question, Brian? Did you have the tweet?
Man, I gave up on looking at that, because it's like I save so many things just to make me laugh, and it's like for me to go through that. But I could tell you the gist of it. So the gist of it was that it was a black person critiquing black culture and saying that we are content with having situationships and like the paradigm between husband benefits and all that, like giving away stuff like this. So I think that they're on to something. I can't say as a whole, because I don't have data on the black community as a whole, but I feel like there are, like, if I just look at different races, for example, like a lot of people who had kids before they were married and ended up not being with the person they were with, they were black. That's something that's particularly prominent with us. It's like when I look at the people I graduated high school with, they got married first. It's like I think marriage is a bigger priority in other cultures than it is with black communities.
Okay.
I mean, it's not saying that you can't marry the wrong person and have a terrible relationship. It's not a panacea to all the world's problems. But I do feel like we can't underestimate the importance of families for us, because that's the foundation of everything. We talk about like nature versus nurture, how much learning impacts a child's future, how much we strive to build generational wealth, generational prosperity. And so a lot of it, you can't really build that without a good family, without a strong foundation with that. The family is the root of everything.
So you would say they are dying for African Americans relationships?
Less popular. Whether we're trying to fool ourselves and say we don't care about that, or we involve ourselves with individuals that we know are not going to lead us to the results that we want. That's not exclusive to us. But I feel like with us, with black people, or I'll put this. This is going to be maybe a controversial take. I hope not, but I feel like with black people, we know the situation that we are in, so things are of a higher magnitude of seriousness for us. So if you know how hard it is for us as black people, as people, however you want to slice it, when we do things that impact us in a negative way, it's more of a setback than if we weren't black. So we need to stop acting like that. Like it's not a game. You don't get a trial run. Like the stakes are higher.
Okay. What do you say, Des?
I don't want to give a definite yes or no to that particular question, because I don't know the statistics of it, but I will say that just from my close circle of friends, like you guys included, and even like some of my childhood friends, only out of, we'll say, 10 people, only 2 of them, maybe 3 of them are in a relationship. Like none of us, as Brian pointed out from our episode with Dr. Tara, none of us are in a relationship. None of my close friends are in a relationship that I know of. Or if they've been in a relationship, it's been a similar to mine, off and on, like consistency. Yeah. Like it's always been a situationship. Like and whenever I like provide these reasons behind it, it's from my own study of myself. Like I understood that when I was in relationships, I had no understanding of myself. And of course, you are who you're closest to. Like you're a what's the word? There's not a word. There's a famous saying, put yourself in a room like with 6 people, you're going to have the same tendencies of those 6 people. In this particular case, it's the same thing. Like I understood that who I was with at that time, like none of us had a profound understanding of who we were as young black men. And all of us have gone our separate ways. Like we still keep close contact. We're still talking, but we're all on like a discovery. And this doesn't include you, Josh. This is more or less my childhood.
No, I'm trying to think like who you talking about.
Yeah,
I didn't think you was talking about me.
Nah, yeah, this is like my childhood troop. Like we're all still really close together, but our paths and our, the journeys we've gone on for self-discovery requires it to be an independent journey. Like it's not something that we can do, together like we've been doing, because whatever we did together wasn't working. I wouldn't say it's not working. It wasn't for our best benefit to get us to the next level. But it's not one of those things where you get new experiences and then you go about your business. It's like, no, I get new experiences and I bring it back. Oh, this is what I learned. These are the lessons I've gone through. You see with me and my son, like Do you really want a kid at 24, 25, 26, 27 with no solid financial foundation, no solid educational foundation? Like, there's things that we have to go through, and we have to truly master ourselves, whether it be through experience or through wisdom, and then build from there. And I think that those are things that, like, for a gung-ho African American male like myself, to where I much rather pull the trigger first in a figurative sense and then deal with the consequences later. And this is speaking in past tense, of course. And then deal with the consequences later, rather than be methodical and meticulous with my planning and understanding of what my situation is, and then making a solid understanding from there.
So you're saying that everybody in a situationship don't have a master of themselves?
Oh, 100%. Part of being a master of self is understanding the importance of your time. A situationship is literally on the opposite field. If we're talking about positive, negatively charged fields, it's literally on the opposite side of being productive and valuable with your time. Like it.
Because you know that's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly.
What if that person doesn't want a relationship though?
So then you're
like, what if
willfully acknowledging that you're wasting your time.
No, what if that person still wants sex or some shit like that, but they know they're master of themselves? Is it possible that they got a master of themselves? They don't really want a relationship. Maybe they're wasting that person's time, but they just want sex.
The thing is, I agree with you 100%. There are those people who can have a profound mastery of self, but being a true master of self isn't just up here in the mind. It's also spiritually, it's also emotionally, and it's also physically. You have to have, if we do mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, those 4 levels of mastery to be a true master of self. So just because you've mastered the physical and the mental, but you've neglected the emotional and spiritual, that doesn't make you a true master of self. So there is, in a sense, to where even though you can make $200,000, your kids don't want or need for anything, there can still be a drought within your true understanding of self when it comes to your spiritual and emotional. But you can mask it because you've been a master of your mental and your physical and financial.
Okay.
It's still a waste of time. Like, let's be honest, but it's a waste of time, but because you have the means, the financial means, the experience means, things that you've gone through, the goods, the bad, the ugly, like that doesn't take away from the fact that there's still a deficit somewhere else in your life, and that you can just get over it by hopping in your Lamborghini or your Ferrari or your McLaren, take a drive and have it easily drowned out by the sound of your V8 engine or whatever. Like, those are still things that you're neglecting, and it's still a waste of time. You just have the means to make up for that missed time, whereas someone else who is maybe impoverished or middle class, that's not necessarily well off because they're operating at 100% of their means, of their financial means. Like, that just means that whatever you are deficient at, you're proficient at things to offset the scale. Still a waste of time when you're very honest with yourself about it, but it's the reality of, hey, I'm 70% dominant in my mental and physical realm, but I'm 30% deficient in my or you could say 100% deficient in my spiritual and emotional realm.
And let's say, Josh, just for the sake of entertainment, so to entertain the idea of what you just said. So Des, I agree with what you just said, but so I think the people in that scenario that you said, the people who don't want a relationship, I think a large amount of the people who actually say that, they're lying to themselves, and they're saying that they don't want something to have some kind of mental protection, that protective barrier, like, oh, I don't want this, so they distance themselves from caring about the outcome. But I also think that the people who actually truly do not want to be in a relationship is a much smaller number than people who actually say that, So okay. If in that true sense, you are certainly wasting your time. And then best case scenario, if you're not wasting your time, you're wasting somebody else's time too.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
And
And-
that's equally problematic, if not more.
Exactly. And the thing why I'm like pushing back so hard on that is because there was actually a podcast with 19 Keys and Mike Rashid, to where Mike Rashid is someone who is in a polygamous relationship, but he essentially came out and said like, hey, I had to master myself and understand the emotional and spiritual side to know that being in a monogamous relationship just is not for me. So when I go into these polygamous relationship with these women, they're aware of what that is. And a lot of people want polygamous situations, but they don't have the wherewithal and understanding of the self to be direct with those intentions of saying, hey, like with whoever you're fucking around with, this is all I really want. If you can, you know, be honest with yourself and be honest with the person, then no, it's not a waste of time because you're setting these, you know, proper boundaries and expectations of what to expect. But that's not common. A lot of us just want sex, but we're masking it behind gifts, dinners, movies, false words of affirmations, false, you know, like if we think about all the love languages, we're achieving the end goal of sex by manipulating those love languages.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying I want a polygamous relationship.
I hadn't thought about the polygamy angle, but what you were just saying about the just that triggered a thought of mine too. I feel like people want the benefits of a relationship without the responsibility, because you also with the time, I think the time part is what triggered it for me, is you're also responsible for another individual to a certain degree, that you aren't misleading them, that you are the emotion will be like, you're not completely responsible for it, but you're responsible to them, to have their best interest at heart, to actually look out for them, even if it's not working. Like there's a certain way you should conduct yourself. And I feel like a lot of people, they feel like that they should have all the benefits of a relationship and the benefits of an individual, things that they offer. And then when shit blows up, or when they decide that for whatever reason that it's not working, or when the person isn't, when the person's asking for something that they're not willing to give them, then it's out of my hands, it's out of my control. When there is no situation on this planet to where there is great benefit and there's no responsibility. Nobody's gonna give you the world for nothing. Everything is transactional.
100%. And what makes sense for me when it comes to relationships and why I look at it the way I do now in the valuation of time, I always say, and I've said it over and over again, the relationship is a unionship of two people. The individual has to exist, and then the union has to exist. And what makes most sense to me is I look at a relationship like an index fund. If we look at the Dow Jones or the S&P 500, we're only putting the top companies within these index funds, and we're putting our hard-earned money, our hard-earned time into these index funds with the expectation of them succeeding percentage-wise, gains. We're thinking about it in that perspective. So we're as responsible investors are not going to put our time and our money into these index funds if we are not of the understanding that they're going to give us profitable gains.
Right.
And when you break it down in terms that people have to understand, because like it or not, you know, money is, it's the root. We can say whatever we want to say. It's the root. It could be the root of all evil. It could be the root of your happiness. It could be the root of whatever you want it to be. But at the end of the day, it's still the root. And so I think if we break it down in the layman's terms, which people understand, like you should not be putting your time and money spiritually and emotionally into a fund, this relationship that is not going to give you the excitement, enjoyment, and, you know, just overall development that you need as a person. Because at the end of the day, even though you still have your individual self, you're still taking from that fund, you're still taking from that relationship. And then at the end of the day, you're still putting back in it a little bit of kickback. Hey, I got a 10% gain from the relationship. Let me throw 8% back into it so I can reap more and more benefits and rewards of that relationship.
I think that analogy you just made is brilliant on more than one level, because ultimately it is an investment when you're investing your time with another individual. But outside of the polygamy example that you just gave with the gentleman from earlier, but index funds often outperform the market.
They do.
And
Word
so,
to Ray Dalio. Tony Robbins.
yep, exactly. Yeah, index funds outperform the market, so you'll get better returns by investing in like a Vanguard index or an ETF or something like that, than you would by investing in a handful of individual companies. So, it's safer for somebody who, I'm not trying to give investing advice, but it's typically better for you'll get better returns on average if you don't know what you're doing, if you just invest in an index, as opposed to if you buy 8 different companies and then try to average that over time. So I say that to say, when we're investing, if you actually like I guess the term like watering the grass is greener where it's watered type of thing. So if you actually invest your time into that relationship and making that prosperous, you'll get better returns than if you are dibbling and dabbling here and there, and then you end up like in a situation where you're like, well, fuck, I done put in all this work and ain't got nothing to show for it because you gave all these situationships a half-ass effort, as opposed to just taking a genuine interest in something that could go somewhere when the soil was fertile for that, you know? Shout out to my gardeners.
Nice. I like it.
I wanted to
Anything
talk
else?
to you guys. Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to you guys about this because I think that there's a lot of times people, they discount the value of this question because it cuts them. There is something that, like, a lot of people will say that it indicates that someone tries to say something's wrong with them, or that's the visceral reaction people have. So I thought about this. Do you guys ever think about, per the episode with Dr. Tar, we talked about like all of us single. Have you ever thought exactly why you're single? I know, Des, you've answered this to a degree when you've talked about the mastery of self in previous episodes and focusing on honing your craft and things of that nature. And so I'm less concerned about your answer because I think I had that nailed down pretty well. But just so what you said earlier about this, like your wisdom and what you're saying from here on today's episode comes a lot from self-assessment and your experience. And I mean, I looked at it myself because if I could easily say that, okay, well, I could outsource the blame and say that, okay, it's because of the women that I've interacted with, and say that, okay, that no one's perfect. Okay, cool. But what does that actually get me? So it's not conducive to have that line of thinking. And so I think there is value to that question, because if that is something that you actually want, a long-term committed relationship that you can actually build and have a foundation from, it's something that you should probably assess. And if you ask yourself that, you're able to see where you need to grow, whether it be in the let's say it was the result of some of the choice that you made, but that is still a choice that you made yourself, so you can change that pattern, so you do hold some responsibility still. So I'm curious, like, Josh, have you thought about that, why you are?
It's probably crossed my mind. It's definitely probably crossed my mind.
What was your reaction when you answered that? Before you answer that, how'd you feel when you asked yourself that?
The question is, why am I single?
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I might be fucking ugly. Nah, I mean, when I asked myself that, I was just like, why am I single? Is it because, like, is it the area? Did I meet all the women in this area, and it's like, I've discovered all I could in this area. I have to go somewhere else. But I don't know. I haven't thought about it to a long degree for me to even give an actual question. But looking back on the actual relationships I had, the first relationship, I wasn't ready for that relationship. So I guess it goes back to Desmond saying master of self. I was in the first real relationship, I guess to say, because you want to say preschool, where you just go up to her like, hey, you want to be my girlfriend? Yeah, let's do something like that. Like in high school, like 11th grade, like I wasn't doing the little things and anything like that. So I wasn't ready for that relationship. Other than that, I'm trying to think. The next relationship after that, it was really them. like it was really master self as far as them. They couldn't really master themselves. Of course, I have my own traumas I had to deal with too, but really, as far as them, they couldn't really master themselves. So it's like you guys said, it's a two individual type of thing, a relationship. So it's not just one person have to have master and another person is like just going along for the ride or anything like that. Both people have to have master themselves. So that was really in college. I think you know what I'm talking about, Brian. Yeah, she didn't have master of herself.
I know that.
Yeah, I think you know that. And then I'm trying to think if I had a relationship after that, like a genuine relationship. Oh yeah, I did. But of course, she didn't have master of herself too. I know you said don't blame her, but it's true. I mean, I wasn't perfect. Of course, I'm not perfect myself, but I tried though, you know. But you know, things happen.
I think we're two sides of the same coin. I had that experience too, kind of, and I think because I've asked myself that question, and I feel like that question really makes you look at like it annihilates all other like the surface level stuff, and it really makes you, if you actually sit down and focus on and ask yourself, it forces you to look at like the ugly parts of yourself that you're using to like for example self-sabotage, and like how am I through my actions sabotaging me from the outcome that I'm getting. And even with you, like you said that okay, there's a lack of mastery of self. I hadn't mastered myself to the degree that I had that I have currently back then. And then also my particular choice of women, like they could have been like there's a concept that I think a lot of people don't realize. You could be a good person but a terrible partner in a relationship. And so with that being said, I think I take a lot of the responsibility for the women that I chose. So even if it was a case, and let's say, okay, she didn't master herself, which I have experienced that before, but I chose her. I thought that whatever we had going on, whatever you want to call it, that little situation, I thought that we could overcome that, and that she would be able to. And of course, you could say that okay, if somebody is working on themselves and on that process, that you could grow together. But if somebody has not started that journey, and they're not willing to do it, it's a dead end. You're gonna be dragging that person, or you're gonna end up burning yourself out. So I take responsibility for my role in my own negligence, even though in the instance with that lack of self mastery on her part. But I really do think that, like what I said earlier about what Des said about this coming from a lot of your personal experience. What I said earlier about having like the unicorn effect by making yourself feel special, so you have that boundary, so you can protect yourself and insulate yourself from whatever the true issue might be. That's something that I had did previously. So by telling myself that okay, it wasn't me, and that it's everybody else, it was like okay, well I didn't have to do any work, I didn't have to work on anything. But once I was like, get that shit out of here, you're lying to yourself. And then once I did that, it's like, oh well, I actually do have some things I can work on. Like even though I thought that I was all of that, I wasn't all that. I'll just put it that way. There was a considerable amount of work that needed to be done to put myself in a position to be a desirable partner, whether it be how like communication. That was a huge one for me. And I remember I dated this one girl in high school, and I'm just gonna give you the cliff notes, the spark notes. And she had told me that I didn't know how to talk to people, or not. Yeah. So essentially, like that was something that really stuck with me. Like, I don't talk to her. Like that relationship didn't go anywhere. I guess we were cool, but that really stuck to me. So after that, I realized that hey, this is something that I probably should work on, and that's been a huge work in progress in terms of just the way by which I react when people tell me things, and yeah, just the communication skills. That's probably the biggest thing. So that was one of my personal pitfalls that needed work, and so I take responsibility for that too. That hasn't always been the most transparent, even though I thought that I was doing the right thing. Even later on in life, even though I thought my communication had improved, it was like okay, there's still room for improvement.
Word. I'm glad you. I'm before you go, Jess.
Oh, okay. You got it.
Before you go, I was gonna say I'm glad you pointed that out. That even though we can be aware that our person we're dealing with is not has not mastered themselves, that we still, at the end of the day, the choice and decision to put forth time and effort came from us. It was our free will. It was our rational or irrational thoughts. So that origin still is, the onus is still on us for everything that comes, that everything that goes on after that decision you made to put your time and energy into it. So even though we made a bad investment, it's not the company's fault. It's not the entity's fault that it failed. It's still our fault for not putting in, the proper analysis, not taking the time to, vet it, see if it was something truly worth putting time into.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I'm glad that you said that, Brian, about it depends on the person you choose to. Because I was like, because I would sometimes choose women I know that we didn't have anything in common, but hey, she looked good. So I'm going to try to go with her. And of course, that comes back to me, like my fault too. So, but yeah, I like that you said that.
That was what you valued.
Yeah.
It's like over time, I feel like my criteria for what I look for in a woman has definitely changed.
Yeah.
What would be permissible or what I would go for previously. Like the physical attraction still has to be there, but I start looking at more so their capacity to contribute meaningfully in our shared vision for what I see for the future. And if you ask yourself that, I think it's a book that I'm reading by Malcolm Gladwell. He's an extremely brilliant author. And the book talks about making micro judgments and when they're accurate and inaccurate. And like John Gottman, the relationship counselor, he's able to look at a couple interact for 15 minutes, and he could tell with over a 95-degree certainty whether or not they're going to get a divorce. And I think a lot of people can actually apply that logic to our own lives. Like, you don't need to spend 3 years with somebody to know whether or not the relationship is going to fail. I think the most clear assessment you can make on that is to look at what kind of lifestyle you want to have in the future and ask yourself, is this person going to help? Are they going to be conducive or a detriment to achieving this? And that's probably going to be the most clear-cut answer that you need right there. Because a lot of people, like, if you look at, okay, well, you want to have a certain level of affluence, you want to have a woman who is going to help instill a certain mindset in your children. And like, if you look at some of the assessments and the choices that they make, and if they aren't good at making their own decisions, I mean, what do you think they're going to do for your children? And you think about one thing that I thought about recently too, is that people nobody anticipates dying. And so that's something that's even more important too, because let's say, like, unfortunately, like, death is real. We all know that. But like, if I was to have children with a woman and then I die, can I trust her to execute on the shared vision and take care of my children with me not being in the picture? Because that's the only circumstance I would not be in the picture with my children if I was dead. But that's a huge responsibility, and like that's when our decision making is most important, because that's what I'm talking about, the magnitude, the gravity of said things. So that's I guess the evolution of what I look for. And I think that a lot of people, we fool ourselves by saying that, okay, well, we didn't know this. Well, did you ask yourself, is this person going to help me get this? Is this person, like, so for a big thing is like children, for example. If you want to have a family, you want to have 5 kids, let's say, whatever crazy Brady Bunch, however many kids you want, but the person you're with, that you're dating, they don't want kids. Okay, based off of that, I could tell you that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And there's also like, if you say, okay, you want marriage, but the other person says that they don't, that's not going to work. And so by you continue to pursue that, you're doing exactly what Des was saying. You're wasting your time because you already know the answer. But a lot of times people don't actually ask them. They don't work with the end in mind. They don't think about what's the end game, and is what I'm doing contributing to that. That is, like, don't get me wrong, people. I had to catch myself a little bit to say something, but people sometimes they will allow themselves to have their judgment clouded by sex and companionship. And they're just happy to be fucking and riding around and going to the movies and stuff like that. And then after, time, a lot of time, like, years have elapsed, you realize, okay, well, this actually isn't what I want, and that's when things start to go downhill.
I agree. I think a part of it too, people don't have the guts to do it, like, or people don't have the communication skills to actually end something. Like, nah, I don't think this is working. You know what I mean? Like, how many people you actually not even just through text, like maybe in person, because we do shit through text now, but how much in person you're like, you know what, we like yada yada yada, this relationship isn't working because we're just not on the same path. You know what I mean? You don't really hear that much. You know what I mean? I just feel people will lack the communication skills, and people don't have the guts to do it. People are like, and of course, what you said, like, hey, I'm having sex. I mean, I don't want to be alone and not doing this. Like, I mean, do I have a replacement on the side if I'm going to stop doing this? You know, so I think.
I agree in part.
Did you
just 50%?
With what?
With what Josh just said. And the reason why I only agree with it in part is because I could have swore we had this conversation with the prior guest where, and I could be tripping, I recall vividly that sometimes we hear the truth and we take it as a challenge, to where, like using your example, that someone doesn't want children, someone doesn't want a serious relationship, but you still pursue it with the end goal in mind, not of attaining that, but the end goal is changing their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll take more pride and victory in knowing that you changed their mind rather than it be actually getting the end goal. And I promise, I think we had this conversation with a prior guest, because it was something that I really did not think much about, to where a lot of people don't take rejection well. They take it as instead of, a solid no, they take it as, well, damn, how can I turn that no into a yes?
I'll say
they
that.
don't see it as the learning experience, or even just the save that it is, like the avoidance of a path that should not be followed or gone down.
I agree. Most people don't take. Well, no one likes rejection, but a lot of people don't take rejection well, whether it be male or female. But I also think that, Josh, along the lines of what you were saying about communication, as far as like texting people and saying, okay, well, I feel like that's pitiful. Depending on how, like, the seriousness of the relationship, you should have enough dignity and respect for dignity for yourself, and then respect for the person and the relationship, whatever you had, to actually look that person in the eyes and actually have that conversation. I mean, you didn't mind looking them in the eyes when, well, whatever. But so I think that most times people, like, their default recently is like ghosting. They'll do that. So it's as opposed, instead of having like the difficult conversation with you, I'm just gonna not answer you when you text me or call me, but I'm gonna look at all your stories and everything, and I'm gonna orbit you and continue to be in your perimeter, and I'm gonna act like nothing ever happened. That's the default now. that's the default.
Mutual, yeah, or the mutual. You don't text them, they don't text you, so it's like, fuck it. It's like,
I'm guilty of all of the above. I'm not even lying to you. But the thing is, I've learned to raise my red flags before you experience them. I will say that. That doesn't make it any better. But I remember when I went out on a date, like, I made it abundantly clear that I do ghost people. Like, it may not have anything to do with you. It may be just 100% me, but I do in fact ghost people, and it's just like I'm working on it. I know it's an internal thing within me, but I've also been the one to break up through text. Like, I've also been the one to break up through text, or just not respond to somebody. They not respond to me, but I'm still they're all things that I'm aware of and I'm truly working on. But I'm not gonna front and act like I'm holier than thou. Like, no, I am a strong practitioner in in the red flags that you are raising.
And paranormal activities. The as far as that, like, that's something that I overcame, because Josh, you said like mutual, or whoever just said it about the mutual, just you stop talking to each other. I thought about that, and I've overcome a lot of my pride issues, and so I have no problem with, okay, I might not have heard from her in a few days, something like that. I'll shoot a text, and then I might call. But after that, it's like the thing about text messages and notifications, they don't disappear. So I know you see my damn call. So it's like, okay, I'll take the initiative, And if it's not reciprocated, I'm cool off of it. That's when I'll fall back. I'm not the kind of person to be like, okay, well, after we hung out, she didn't text me or something like that. It's like, nah, my responsibility is with myself. As long as I do my part, I'm fine with it. But yeah,
Gotcha.
ghosting is the default. That's what most people go with.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. Did you still want to hear Desmond's reason for being single, or was it good?
If he can enlighten me on something that I didn't say just then, when I had told him what I thought based off what his previous answers were.
No, I think you recapped my answers perfectly, and then I just put the icing on the cake with my red flags. I'm well aware. So I'm very cognizant of my red flags and that the triggers are not predetermined, and that it can be you, it can be me. And, I know that there's a lot of things that I need to work out internally that take time, because being a parent, it's a balance. It's a war on balance, I'll say, of trying to find a proper time to do the self-therapy that I essentially have to go through to, I would just say self-diagnosis of what are my triggers, because it's a boundary thing for sure. And more times than not, my red flags are all boundary driven, to where I am overcommitting myself and I'm redlining it, or I've just made a bad decision. So, to be honest.
Okay, gotcha. You have anything else, Brian?
No, not now. I think I'm satisfied.
Des, you got a recommendation of the week?
Of course, I do. So the recommendation of the week is actually something I was talking to Brian about earlier today. It's actually as you guys know now, I'm a big advocate for Audible, but it's Self-Discipline, How to Build Mental Toughness and Focus to Achieve Your Goals by John Winters. And specifically recommending this one because it ties in very briefly on our conversation about burnout and my perspective of instant gratification. Instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So, yeah, definitely something to give it a listen to. It definitely gives a bit of insight, more polished, articulate insight on my delayed gratification versus instant gratification POV. And then it's also a really good listen to as well, as far as the key pillars of achieving self-discipline.
Nice. All right, be sure to check it out. If you guys like the episode, don't forget to hit the like button, and be sure to check out all the episodes in the season. Okay, we're gonna see you guys in the next season. Peace.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua versus Movies, Joshua versus Music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, Feel the Love. Just check out this begonia.